So one day I filled a giant hamster ball up with water and busted the zipper and all the water came out. Full vid is on my YouTube, but anyway, now I want to see if my hamster ball still works so I can put a hoverboard in and ride in it. So I fixed the zipper and then aired it up. I wanted to see if it would still hold its shape after having all that water in it. And after it was all aired up, it still did. So I pushed it over a bush and out to the yard to mess with it. I kicked it, and then I pushed it, and then I jumped on it, and then I jumped on it again. And after that, I deflated it and then got in it with my hoverboard to air up. And after a little bit, it was done filling up. So I picked up my hoverboard, walked out to the street, sat it down, and got on. And it worked. I spun around, and I also drove to the hill part to go down it. And I fell. But I kept going. And then I turned around and went back up and fell again multiple times. And then I headed home and really fell. So I got out.
That was cool.
And drove off. So one day I decided to go magnet fishing. I got the magnet and then I headed down to the creek. I tossed the magnet in and got nothing. And then got some more nothing. Yeah, and then I got some more nothing. So then I went on over to a different spot and saw what looked like a phone. I threw the magnet in but missed, and then I couldn't get it, and all I kept doing was stirring up the dirt. The dirt eventually cleared and I could see it again. So I threw it in and eventually I hooked it. And I pulled it up.
Yeah, this thing's definitely ruined.
The magnet wouldn't come off, and it was definitely broke. Then I got the magnet stuck on a pole.
I see something right there.
I saw something in the water, then threw the magnet in, and on the second try, I hooked it. Like for part 2. So one day I ordered an inflatable couch to float down the creek in. I unwrapped it and then let it air up and got on it. And then folded it into a couch and my dog got on it. Then we took it outside, put it in my brother's truck, and went to the creek. I sat by the highway and then carried it all the way down over the rocks and out to the water and out to the launching point where I pushed off. And it worked really well and was amazing. I continued on and then decided to lay down and just enjoy the ride. And then I almost ran into a tree. And I kept going out even further and waved goodbye to my brother. And before you know it, I was just gone, out of sight of anything but the GoPro. But eventually I came back and dragged it all the way back to shore, up the rocks, and into the truck, and all the way home. So one day I ordered this stuff called Great Stuff, which is basically expandable foam insulation. And my goal was to build a boat out of it. Not just any boat, a cardboard boat, because a while back I had a series on TikTok where I tried to make cardboard boats float, and I was never very successful. But I used the best cardboard boat design I knew how to make, and then I was going to cover the entire outside in the Great Stuff. And hopefully it'll float. So I finished taping up the entire bottom, like this. And I already had a decent looking boat. Then we covered the entire bottom in the Great Stuff. And then later we covered the rest of the sides. And when I came back the next day, it was solid looking. And it was ready to be tested in the creek. I walked it down and then got in. And I started to float away. It was working flawlessly without any problem. So I just kept on rowing and having a good time. And then I about ran into a tree. And then I started heading out further. And it was the best boat I'd ever made. I just kept going. So one day I went to Walmart and got tinfoil to make a giant tinfoil ball like the ones I've seen people making on TikTok. I started with a small one and then began wrapping more and more tinfoil around it. And it looked pretty cool, like an asteroid. And I just kept wrapping it, and like a snowball, it just kept getting bigger. I continued to wrap it for quite a while, and it was beginning to look pretty cool. I finished it up, and then I took it outside to play basketball with it on my jankety hoop. And it stuck in the hoop, but I got it out and started playing with it. And not gonna lie, I was doing pretty good with it. I even made this long shot. Then I got it down, and while I was walking back, I shot from behind and made it. Yeah. And then it came down like a giant asteroid. So one day I decided to go to Walmart and get a can of Flex Seal and a few sheets of cardboard, and then I headed home to build a cardboard boat. I had the stuff and I was ready to build. I cut the sheets so I could form them into a boat. I then took my duct tape and I duct taped all around it. I then flipped it over and duct taped that side. I got the base for the boat and positioned it in. I put some duct tape on it, flipped it over again, and put another piece of cardboard on it for support. Now it was ready for the Flex Seal, so I took it to my backyard to be sprayed. I sprayed all around the seams and in every corner until I was done and ready to test it in the creek. Like for part 2. So one day I ordered a human-sized hamster ball to run in the creek with. I took it outside, unboxed it, and unfolded it. I then plugged the air pump in and turned it on. And while it was filling up, I pulled all the folds out to make sure it filled up all the way. It was done, and I rolled it out to the grass and unzipped it, and all the air came out.
Air pump.
Yeah, I felt pretty dumb, but then I took it to my brother's truck to take to the creek. We got there, and I drank the Bang to have energy like a hamster. I got in the ball, and my brother started filling it up. It was pretty neat from the inside, and I liked the air. And then it was done, and I ran towards the creek.
Follow you.
I got in the water.
Whoa!
Like for part 2. So one day someone commented for me to try to trade my rubber band ball with the pawn shop again, so I put it in my car, and this would be my 3rd time going. I walked in and said,
I'm back. Hey, what's happening, Dylan? I actually have this new ball.
I showed him my new aluminum foil ball first, and he said,
Pretty neat. You from getting an alien invasion. I was thinking this thing is started it, so it's probably not going to be worth a ton. $300.
and he kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and then asked how many rolls of aluminum foil were in it, so I told him 6, and then he asked how much weight, and I didn't know, so I had him weigh it, and it wouldn't register.
What did you spend on the foil? About like 24.
And he passed, so I threw it down and got the rubber band ball.
Almost 80 pounds, and is the most famous rubber band ball in the world, probably, maybe. That's massive.
He picked it up and then asked how much I'd sell it to him for, and I thought for a second and then highballed him at 25 grand.
1,000? Wow.
And he said his shop could probably only sell it for,
100 bucks.
so I knew we had no deal. I had to pass. I got some candy and then went out the door, and the ball almost went in the street. Let me know any other ideas you have. So one day I decided to see how much a pawn shop would give me for my rubber band ball. So I got in my car and drove out to one, but it was closed for another 30 minutes. So I waited, ate a burrito, and then went back in and said,
I got this rubber band ball.
Okay.
I want to sell for $200.
Why do you think it's worth $200?
I put a lot of time into it. It's a lot of rubber bands,
How many rubber bands are in there?
like 14 bags.
How many is in a bag?
I have no idea. But it weighs 6.5 pounds.
Wow, does it bounce? Wow, bounces pretty good. Well, how old are you?
16.
You got to be 18 before you can do anything with it.
and then he said he'd give me $100 for it if I counted all the rubber bands and had someone 18 sell it for me. So I thought about it and said,
200.
No, I can't go 200 on it, but that'd be worth just watching you count that many rubber bands for 100 bucks.
500.
I couldn't get 500 bucks out of a rubber ball.
How much do you think you could sell this for?
50 bucks.
I'm gonna have to walk.
All right. Appreciate you coming in.
so then I walked out with my rubber band ball, and I guess I'm just gonna have to keep adding bands. So one day, my brother and I decided to go dumpster diving at a phone store. I looked in the dumpster, and it was kind of gross. So my brother got in and looked around while I waited outside of the dumpster. After looking for a little bit, he found a screen protector, and he kept looking and eventually gave up. So I decided to get in and give it my shot. And I bent down to look inside a box, and inside was this.
What? No way.
I looked at it, and then I got out and began to open it.
Alright, let's open it up.
Like for part 2. So one day I wanted to put chalk dash lines all around my neighborhood like I saw this girl on TikTok do. So I went to Walmart and got some spray chalk and some regular chalk. Then went home and tried to make a stencil out of cardboard but failed. Then I tested out some spray chalk, and after that I measured the middle of the road and marked it. Then I tied some rope to a hoverboard to try to pull me, but it failed. Then I made it longer, and it still failed. So I tried walking, but that sucked. And I thought it'd be easier with some normal chalk, but it still failed. So I got out a hoverboard I thought was broken, and it worked perfectly. And when I ran out of one piece, I got a new one, and kept going all the way until the end of one side of my neighborhood. I ran out again, but kept going, and then was done. And then I went back home, got some more chalk, and went out to the other side of my neighborhood to get started. And I finished off the neighborhood and ran out of chalk. And then on the way home, my hoverboard died, so I had to carry it all the way home. And now here's driving before the lines, and here's driving after. Part 2 of making a giant paper airplane. So I picked it up and walked it over to my car, and struggled to put it in my trunk. But I got it, and I was ready to throw it off a bridge. I got there, got my plane, and went to go throw it off.
Guys. 3, 2, 1.
And it kind of flew. I went down and got it, and then I went back up to try again. I threw it, and it landed in a tree. I got it, and then some guy fishing told us to add some supports to the wings. So I went to Walmart and got some duct tape and some pencils. I did the best I could to tape them all to the wings and support it. And then I ran up the stairs like Rocky. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I was at the top of the hill, and then I threw the plane. And it was pretty windy, so it didn't fly very well. I kept trying over and over again. The wind just kept taking it, and after a bunch of fails, I just did a really bad front flip. Part 2 of making a cardboard boat and putting it in the creek. So I carried it over to my brother's truck, put it in, and then we headed to the creek. I put on some old shoes in case the boat sank, and then I headed to the creek with my boat. I headed down there, and then I picked out my launching area. I picked it out, and I put it in the water.
Oh my God,
I got
this
in the
is
boat,
so
and it was pretty
hard.
sturdy.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't move,
Bro,
so I tried paddling. And
Get
when
on
that
water.
didn't work, I got
Oh!
out, dumped the water
Bro, we're
out,
taking in water.
and put the boat in deeper water. I got in again, and it crumpled.
Oh God! Oh! He's going under. He's going under. Oh!
My feet were soaked, so I got out, got mad, and threw the boat. And sure enough, then it started to float. It went away. And then I threw a rock. Don't get triggered. We chased it down. So one day I decided to fill a giant hamster ball up with water and get in it. I moved it to level ground and then put the hose in to let it fill up. Then I put some wood down so it wouldn't roll and let it fill. And here's the checkpoint. It's pretty cool looking, and I hit it on the side and then added some more air. And after that, I let it fill up to this point. And I'm going to stop it when it gets to the zipper. And it got there, so I stopped it. Then I put some goggles on and unzipped it, but it broke. But I got in anyway. I went in and swam to the side. And I looked like a fish. And then I struggled to get out. Then I threw the snorkel and went back under with just the goggles. And it was pretty cool. I swam around, did a circle, and then did another circle. And then struggled again to come up. And it was kind of like a water balloon, so I jumped on it, rocked on it, flipped on it, and then swam on it. Let me know any other ideas you have for me to try. So one day my brother and I were hiking in the woods, and I kept falling. And my brother also kept falling, so I tried to help him. But when that failed, I just went up by myself. But my brother just kept falling and falling and falling, so I just helped him. And then we both made it up to a less steep part. And we were both so focused on climbing that we ended up going separate ways. And I looked behind me, and he was gone. So I yelled his name and started to look for him.
Jack? Jack?
I climbed up higher to see if he had already made it to the top.
Jack? Are you under here, Jack?
I looked everywhere, but I just couldn't seem to find him anywhere.
Jack?
Like for part 2. So one day I wanted to put a bunch of ball pit balls in my giant hamster ball. So I went to Walmart and got 700 balls, took them to my car, loaded them all up, and went home. And put them all in my hamster ball with the help of my brother. Then I got in and let it air up. Psh, until it was done. I splashed all the balls around, and then I headed off the stairs, into the driveway, and on out into the street, where I slipped and fell. I then jumped up into the balls, and then I wanted to hit this ramp, and I just ran over it. Then I went back onto the road, ran for a bit, then fell again, and made a snow angel, and threw some balls. I got back up and walked off. Then I shook the entire thing, and then went back on home, got out, got back in, then got out, fell on it, and used it as a beanbag. Like if I should do it again with more balls. Part 2 of magnet fishing. So I pulled in the thing.
Dude, no way. It's a skateboard. How the heck did this get in there?
Then I went over to fish some more, and I saw this coin in the water and tried to get it.
Money ain't magnetic.
But my brother
Wait,
said,
what?
Money's not magnetic.
I felt pretty dumb, and then I splashed the water with the magnet, and then I went up with my skateboard. I tried to skate beside the side of the road, but I sucked because I've never really skated before.
They call me Tony Hawk. Ain't much to it, but to do it.
Then I took the board home and messed around with it. I tried to do lots of cool tricks. I kicked it, then I jumped on it, then I fell off, and then I threw it. So one day I decided to get a snorkel and a towel and head down to the creek to look for treasure underwater. I set my stuff down, put my gear on, and then headed into the water. I looked around and found a rock. I kept looking with no luck, so then I put my phone on this thing to film underwater. And I kept scanning around underwater looking for stuff and eventually found this pair of sunglasses. Then I saw this flip-flop floating, and it was someone who was swimming over there, so I threw it to him. And then I began walking over to a deeper part of the creek to look for stuff. And I ended up taking off my snorkel because it was useless. Then I went back out, and after a while of looking, I found this pipe thingy. And I put it on my head as a necklace. And then I went back out, jumped in, and found this. Like for part 2. So one day I went back to Walmart to retry my failed cardboard boat. I got Gorilla Tape, some duct tape, some cardboard, and bubble wrap. And then I headed home. I also ended up getting this cart because it was fun. I got home and started building my new design. It was going to be a lot more boxy this time, and my plan was to put 2 boxes together. I used Gorilla Tape to tape the seams of the boxes, and then I put them together. And then I flipped it over to tape the bottom. And after that, I cut out the middle piece that was inside the box. And then I covered the whole bottom of the boat in duct tape, and ended up using the whole roll. And then I covered it in bubble wrap so it would like float, I guess. And it was done. I'm running out of time, so part 2 tomorrow. So one day I went to Walmart and got a bunch of poster board and a roll of Gorilla Tape. And then I headed home to build a giant paper airplane. I started out by making a smaller version to test the material out. And it flew pretty well. Then I got out 4 sheets of poster board and taped them all together with the Gorilla Tape. And it was already turning out better than I thought it would. I then flipped it back over and folded the plane in half. After that, I started making all the folds necessary to make a paper airplane. And it was kind of hard to work with a material like this, but by taping it all, I kind of managed. I folded it in half, and then I made the wings. And after that, I taped up all the seams and the bottom of the plane for extra support. And it was done and ready to be thrown off a bridge, like for part 2. So one day I got an air mattress, some cardboard, some tape, and I started making a cardboard boat. I started by taping 1 sheet of cardboard on the edge, and then I added another sheet on the end and taped it down. After that, I added 1 last edge piece and taped it down all around. Then it was done, and I picked it up and put it in my brother's truck, and we headed down to the creek and carried it down to go test it.
Dude, let's just sail off right there.
I put it in the water, and then I got in and started rowing. And I rowed out decently far.
Dylan?
But any further, I was headed for a current, so I made my way back. And then we both got in to sail, like for part 2. Part 2 of putting a hamster ball in the creek. Don't try this at home or anywhere. So I walked in, and it was pretty strong and started to carry me away. It was pretty neat in there, but when I tried to stand up and run, I just fell. So I laid down, and then I got back up and tried again. But yeah, it never worked. So I just chilled and let the current take me, and then we came to this bridge thing, and my brother and my dad stopped me. But I couldn't quite run up to land, and it was kind of a problem. And then some other people helped push, and I made it up and ran off. And then my brother unzipped me.
Good job, Jack. Whoa, my ears popped.
So as you know, I have this giant rubber band ball, but now I want to make a little rubber band ball to show you how. I first wadded up a clump of bands and then wrapped them around each other until I had this. And then I started doubling up bands and adding them to the clump for a while until I had this. And after that, I just kept on going until I got to this. And it's pretty neat and bouncy. I went on for quite a while after this until it looked like this. And it's pretty cool and weighs a lot less than my other one, weighing 0, and this one weighing 28. And it's not even close to the size of my head. Here's me throwing the big one, and now here's me throwing the small one. Now a basket with the small one, a basket with the big one, eventually. And throwing the big one, and throwing the small one. I had to run after it. Yeah, they're both pretty cool. So one day I went to the party store and got a bunch of giant balloons and a helium tank. And then went home to see what I could make fly away. I already had 2 blown up. I blew up the first red one, tied it, and then I blew up the second blue one and tied it. And now I had 4 balloons. And then I twisted and taped all the strings together and tried to lift up a weight, but it failed. So then I tried an apple. And it worked. After that, I had an idea to tie a box to the strings and send something away. I trimmed up the box and forgot the 4th balloon. So I tied it on and then went outside and taped a Tesla Hot Wheel to the box and tried to send it to space. And it went down, so I ripped off some cardboard and it still failed. I ripped off some more and it went to my roof, then fell off. I let it go a final time and it took off and left on into space. So one day I decided to prank my brother with fake spray paint on his truck. But I needed more, so I went to Walmart and got some. And then I started with the blue, just writing a bunch of random stuff and scribbling. And when I was out of that, I got to the orange, writing a bunch more random junk. And when I ran out of that, this side was pretty much done, so I switched over to the next side and finished it. And go ahead and like the video since I'm not making you wait for the reaction. And here it is.
This is a joke, right? What'd you do? What'd you do? This is fake, right?
It's real, bro.
This is real spray paint.
And when he touched it, I think he realized it was fake, so we pulled it out to the cul-de-sac and washed it. And then he tried to spray me. Yeah. Part 2 of dumpster diving. So I hopped out to open up the iPhone box, and... yeah, so I got mad, threw it on the ground, and walked off. And then my brother got in to try one more time. He looked around, and then I said, "Check that box."
This one? Dude, what?
And oddly enough, inside that box was a Wii.
Here.
So I took it,
Wow. Dude.
put it in my car, and then drove home to see if it would work. I got home, plugged it in, and turned it on. It turned on, and inside of it was Wii Sports. Then I turned on the TV, and it worked. So one day I was just scrolling through TikTok, and I kept seeing this apple bottle trend. So I drove to Walmart and went to the juice aisle to look for it. But there was none. So I left and went to a nearby Dollar Tree to look. And there was none there either. So I left and went to Target to look. And all they had were these big bottles that didn't crunch like an apple at all. And I bought the bottle I bit because germs. And then left, went home, and then went back to Walmart the next day to look again. And then to a neighborhood market that had them, or so I thought. I took them home, opened one up, and then bit into it. And it wouldn't crunch. That doesn't sound like an apple. I had got the glass bottles, but I drank it anyway, and it was pretty good, so I just kept drinking it. So one day someone commented to drop my rubber band ball from somewhere high, and I don't live anywhere where I can really do that because it weighs 65 pounds and could hurt someone. So I took it to this abandoned race car track, took it to the second story, and dropped it. And it bounced and then just rolled into the ground, and I was like, I gotta do something else. So I went down to this pipe, and I'm like, can I put it in there? So I looked, and it just gradually got smaller, so my ball would have got stuck. Glad I didn't do that, but I just ended up throwing it off, and it bounced off into the fence. And it got this mark on it. Oh well, let me know what else I should do with my rubber band ball. So one day I could feel in the air that a storm was coming. And I was right. There was a tornado warning, so I waited for it while I ate some beans, and then it rolled in, while my dad just sat in a chair watching it. It started to pick up and blow even harder, and it was pretty neato looking. And when I thought it was getting bad, I ran inside, grabbed my beans, then I ran out the door and headed for the storm shelter. It was pouring down rain, and I didn't know if my beans would make it. But we got there, I put it in, and then I ate them. And then I saw a spider. And that's my dog. And then we got out, because we were probably overreacting, and I ate all my beans. So, yeah. So one day someone said I should try to go to the pawn shop again, so I'm going to take my rubber band ball, this chain, and some other stuff. I put the ball in my car, and then got my bling on, and then went inside the pawn shop and said...
What's going on? I'm back. Got a few more things.
Okay, what you got today?
Bling on this
Wow,
time.
that's blingy.
First off, I got this tiny rubber band ball.
Is this an offspring of that one?
Sure, yeah.
Now in babies? What's up with that?
Want to buy it?
I then told him I wanted $50 for it, and he said...
$50 for $5 worth of rubber bands? Better pass on that one.
So I then threw it and got out my genuine gold watch.
Gold watch.
And he didn't seem to think it was gold.
You got screwed.
Walmart, what a ripoff.
They do that to a lot of people.
Probably explains why it was like $10.
And after that, I got out my chain and said it was probably
This much
worth...
gold's probably worth about $30K.
He looked at me like I was crazy and then weighed it.
90 grams.
Is that a lot?
No.
Oh.
And he ended up passing on the chain, so I got out the rubber band ball. There was 80 pounds last time I brought it in, and now over 100.
You're a lot stronger than you look.
It would take a lot for me to let this thing go. What's your best offer?
You get $150 for it.
And I knew I couldn't do it. So I threw the ball down and headed out, knowing I'll probably never sell. So one day, my brother and his friend had an idea to take all the ball pit balls from my storm shelter and put them all in our friend Joe's office, who's an insurance agent. So we transported them all to the office, and we had to put them all in here. But first, I spun around in the chair a little bit, and then got to pouring, and we poured out all the ball pit balls, and it was completely covered. I set the GoPro up. We shut the lights off and left, and he was supposed to come back in the morning, but he actually ended up coming in at midnight. And here was his reaction.
What the hell is this? No way. You guys got one this time. Next time, it's not gonna happen.
He then messaged me, so I zoomed over there to get his reaction.
What were you doing back here?
What do you mean? I come back all the time.
Here it is, completely covered.
Dylan, you're still recording me?
So one day, my friend and I went out to this giant snow pile in the middle of a parking lot to build a giant igloo. We got to digging for a long time. He would dig out the hole, and I would scrape it out with the big shovel like this. We repeated this process for quite some time until eventually it looked like this. We were starting to make our way in, and it was starting to look like an igloo. And our next goal was trying to make it taller so we could easily dig. And after a lot more time, we got it looking like this, but we still had more to go. It had been over an hour, and we were just throwing snow everywhere. Then we saw this truck drifting in the parking lot, and here's our progress so far. We accidentally put a hole in the roof. Here it is. But it's a pretty big igloo that you can even stand up in. But the sun was coming down, so we had to leave, like if we should keep going. So one day I decided to make another aluminum foil ball because I couldn't find my other one. So I took a roll and patted it down to a ball and went all around until the roll was empty. And I had this, and then I got another roll and wrapped it all around. And I ended up with this. Then I put the final roll on, patted it down, and bam, an asteroid. Yeah, it's a decent sized ball. I threw it up in the air and then I compared it to my rubber band ball. Then I dropped the 75-pound rubber band ball all over and it made it this cool chair. And then asteroids started falling to the earth. Like if I should keep on going. So one day I ordered around 300 Rubik's Cubes to try to make one of those paintings that I keep seeing on TikTok. We made a frame, I tested it out, and it would do. It was alright. But then I had to think what I would make and how I would make it. And I decided I would make Shrek using a color grid type thing. So then I started placing cubes, and I underestimated how long it would take. It ended up taking like 4 hours. And I didn't have black, so I ended up using orange. So when I got done, I rearranged some cubes and also took some stickers off and made it look even better. And the further you go, the more it looks like Shrek. So one day someone commented for me to use hot glue sticks to try to get the dents out like 5-minute crafts. And I'm gonna try because I put quite a lot of dents in this car with my rubber band ball. I went to Walmart, got some hot glue sticks, and then went home to fix these dents. The little lighter wasn't big enough, so I got out this blowtorch, stuck it on, and it pulled the metal but didn't work. So I tried again and still failed. Yeah. So I got out the longer sticks with more fire, don't try this at home, and failed again. And then I tried to make a smaller dent with a bat, thinking the dents were too big, but that wasn't the case.
This is indeed cap.
So one day I left the door open and my dog went up to it. He thought about going out for a second and then he ran out. So then I see that I left the door open and realize my dog is gone. And then I run out the door to chase after him. I see him in the distance and then I yell his name. However, when he sees me running after him, he runs in the opposite direction. But I keep chasing him, testing different techniques to try to catch him. I try creeping up on him, but that fails. So then I try to Naruto run, and that causes me to fall down. And when I get back up, I've lost him, and I say,
Gandhi? Oh no! I lost him!
like for part 2. So one day I decided to take a metal detector and a shovel and go look for stuff in my yard. I heard my first beep, and it was just a BB, so I kept going. And I heard another beep, so I got my shovel and started digging. And it was a Hot Wheel.
A car.
So I put it in my pocket and kept looking. And then I heard another beep, so I ran and got my shovel and started digging. And there was nothing there.
Fire!
So I kept on going until I heard another beep. And then I dug it up. And it was an old toy.
How did this get in the ground?
And then I walked around my yard some more with no luck.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
So then I left and went to an abandoned race car track, and I found a battery. And then I just kept looking around, roaming, and I heard another beep. And the full video will be on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day I decided to get in my human-sized hamster ball and fill it up with water. I first filled it all the way up with air, and then once that was done, we put the hose in and added water. And we ended up stopping when the hamster ball got too heavy to move. I then rolled off, and it was really heavy and hard to push, so I ended up just sitting down, but then it was cold. I made it all the way out to the street and then jumped in it, and also fell down. I pushed the ball out to the yard, and then sat down again because I got tired.
I'm a fishy. Flopfish.
I then got out, and then later decided to do it again, but this time with less water so I could move better. And this way was much better. I could run and splash the water around a lot better, but I also fell down. Now on my YouTube, I will be making a video where I fill the entire thing up with water and then get in it like a fish in a fishbowl. Part 2 of making another cardboard boat. So I put the boat in my brother's truck and then we headed to the creek. We got there and I got my oar out of the truck and then we headed down. And I was pretty sure my new design would work. We got down, I took off my shoes, and then I put my boat in the water. And my feet got pretty muddy.
Dang.
I got in the boat, but couldn't quite balance my weight.
Oh.
And ended up tipping over.
Even it out. Oh!
So I got up, got the water out of the boat, and tried again.
Wait.
But this time, I fell even harder. So I got out and, well, I tried again. Yeah, it was a pretty big fail.
I'm done with boats.
I dragged the boat up, hit it a few times, and then for some reason I got in the cold water, ran around, and threw a rock, and dragged the boat home. Part 2 of making a cardboard boat. So I put the boat in the truck and some flippers, and then we took it down to the creek. I walked down there and put my boat in the water. I then got in, pushed myself off, and used my flippers to row myself. And it worked.
It's working.
I rowed myself out to the middle.
Haha, losers. This is to everyone who said I couldn't make it. I'm in a cardboard boat now.
And then I rowed even further and laid down.
I'm just chilling, bro.
I then decided to see how far I could row it.
Don't know when I met you, but I met you.
I made it pretty far, but the water started to get in and I started to sink.
It's sinking.
It went under and it was pretty freezing.
You know, my boat may have sank, but at the end of the day, I'd call this a success.
I then dragged the boat up and took it home. So one day I ordered a go-kart attachment for my hoverboard. I got all the parts out and then I looked at the instructions and tossed them. And after that I quickly realized I needed them and then I started putting everything together. I finished it all up and then strapped it to my hoverboard and then got on it and drove out the door. I drove to the driveway and then through a puddle and then down the road and I lost control. And then lost control again and hurt myself.
You sound like a whale.
I pulled it out of the ground and the hoverboard wouldn't work anymore. So I tried to fix it by tossing it. And when that failed, I got all sad. But then I had the thought, I'll just go to Walmart and blow all my money on a new one. So I got there, pushed the button, and then took it home. And then I put my go-kart attachment on it to ride it around. I kept riding, and then I also failed on a wheelie. And then I made my way towards a hill to go down it. And ended up losing control again and going into someone's yard and then doing it again. And then the next day, the broken one worked somehow and I wheelied it and spun on it and finally drifted out. So one day I decided to take my giant 110-pound rubber band ball back to the abandoned water park that I took it to before to run down this slide back when it was 70 pounds. And last time we did it, people yelled at us, so we had to find the owner this time to get permission. And we found this house. It was right beside the park, so we knocked on the door and no one answered. So we kept looking around until these kids came up. They went and got their older brother and we asked him and he said,
Rubber band ball down a slide. Go ahead, man. All right.
and we thought we were good to go until he said this.
I'm not supposed to be out here.
And we didn't know what he meant by that, but we didn't care because he gave us permission and we were still going to send it. So I carried the ball all the way to the top and it was pretty cool looking up there. Here's the drone shot. And I decided to do this aluminum foil ball first. I pushed it off and it kept on going and then stopped. Here it is on the drone. So I went out and got it, but then the drone cam picked up on a car driving by. And after that, I heard a bunch of yelling right when I was about to launch the rubber band ball. The full video is on my YouTube, Dylan Ayres. So one day I went to Walmart to get the stuff to retry my failed cardboard boat attempt. I got a bunch of tape and a pretty good amount of cardboard. And then I left, went home, and started building. I first began by setting up one sheet and taping it down. And then I added a second sheet and used a lot of tape to tape it to the first one. After that, I connected the two with a final sheet of cardboard and used a lot of tape to secure it. Next, I folded down all the flaps with a bunch of tape to make it thicker and float better. Then I flipped it over to tape the bottom, and I also added the base sheet and taped that down too. I finished taping that and then flipped it back over to tape the bottom up, and also added another sheet of cardboard for more support. Then finished off the boat by taping up the entire bottom to waterproof it. And it was done and ready to be tested in the creek. Like for part 2 or just watch the full video on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day I grabbed my cardboard car and my hoverboard. I put them both in my car and then headed to Sonic drive-thru. I got there, got out, and got my hoverboard and my cardboard. And then put it on and headed over to order food. I rolled up in my cardboard car like a boss. And then I pressed the button. And eventually someone answered.
Sonic, my name's Hunter. Be my absolute honor. Take orders today.
All right. I would like a breakfast burrito and a medium strawberry limeade.
Set a breakfast. All right. Is this all complete orders today?
Yep.
Have a super amazing day.
All right, you too.
And then I waited around in my box for my food. And then it said it's on its way.
That'll be all. All right, thank you.
I got my food and then drove off back to my car.
So one day I was on my phone and I saw that everyone should stay inside because of an apocalypse or something. So I got up and went to my room to get a tent out of my closet. I grabbed the tent and headed downstairs. I got downstairs in the kitchen and I grabbed a banana as my food for survival. I then headed out my back door, leaving behind my home and everything I knew. I was going to bug out in the woods with my tent. I walked around my backyard looking for a spot to set up, and I eventually found one. Dropped my stuff and went to go set up my tent. I began building the tent, and I suck at building tents, so I was trying to remember what to do. After looking at the pieces and experimenting, I figured it out. I threw the cover on and I had my tent built. I then crawled inside, zipped it up, and said, I'm gonna stay here until there's no more apocalypses. Yeah. Like for part 2. So one day I got my magnet and decided to go magnet fishing again. I got down there and threw my magnet in.
Oh, I see something.
Then I saw something in the water and started aiming for it. I kept missing, but after a few tries, I got it.
I got it. Yo, what is that? Looks like a car part.
I then walked it over to my pile,
Will be our pile.
and then walked over to a new location and found a hydro flask. It was also full of water. I walked it over to the pile and then saw something floating, but the current was too fast and it went too far. Then I saw something I must have missed in the water. Full video will be on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day someone commented that I should cover my rubber band ball in Flex Seal, and seeing as I broke it and it needed a little bit of fixing because there's glass shards on it, I thought, why not? So I rolled it out to my yard and started spraying it. I sprayed all around it until it was done. Actually, I gave it a little bit more and then let it sit. And the next day I came back and it had rained, but it was still solid compared to the side that wasn't Flex Sealed. I picked it up and took it out to the cul-de-sac and it bounced the same and was just kind of stale. I rolled it into the basketball goal. Boom. Then stood on it, and let me know what else I should do. So one day I went to Walmart to retry my last 2 failed cardboard boat attempts. I got duct tape, Gorilla Tape, and 5 sheets of cardboard, and then I headed home to build it. I felt confident I could make it work. I set the stuff down and began to build. I cut the first sheet and then folded it into a half boat. I then taped up the seams and cut the flaps off. Then I flipped it over and taped up the bottom. And then flipped it back over and pushed another piece into it. I taped them together and then cut the flaps off. Then flipped it over and taped the bottoms together. And then put another piece of cardboard on the bottom for support. And next I covered the entire bottom of the boat in duct tape to make it waterproof. It was looking pretty good and I felt pretty confident. I added a piece of cardboard and it was done. Third time's a charm, like for part 2. So one day I decided to take my 12.9 pound rubber band ball and see how high it would bounce off a building. But first in the street and then in the hoop. And then I got a ladder and climbed up to the roof of my house with the ball to throw it off. I threw it off and it bounced pretty high and went into the yard. And then I tried to go up even higher to throw it off and just dropped the ball and almost took out my brother. And then I went down so I didn't fall off. I put the ball in my car and took it to a parking garage to throw it off that. I walked up there and tossed the ball off. Yeah, it bounced pretty high. And then I went back up all cinematic with the ball, ran around, and then I fell. But I got back up, took my ball to the edge and bounced it off. And then celebrated. Full vid will be on my YouTube. So one day I ordered a life straw that's supposed to allow you to drink any water. I opened it up, read the package, and then tried to drink with it. And it had the wrong end, but the other end wouldn't fit. So I went and got a container, dumped my drink into it, and then drank out of the wrong end again. And the straw made it taste kind of funny, so I got up and went to test it on hot tub water. And let's just say it still tasted like hot tub water. I spit it out, and then I left and went to the creek to test out the creek water.
This, dude.
I put my straw in the water and started drinking it. And
Tastes like water.
I took another drink from the creek, and then I threw the straw around my neck and left. So one day I decided to fill up a giant hamster ball with ball pit balls in it up with water. So I got in, let it air up, and then began filling it up with water. The water shocked me at first, and then I just let it fill up and stopped it before it got too heavy. I then laid in it for a second. It was pretty cool. And then I got up and went off, and fell pretty hard. And after that, I got up and fell again. But I went out, and then decided to lay down and put my face underwater. Then I just chilled in it. Pretty nice. I walked around for a bit, went out into the yard, slid in the balls, and then did a cannonball. And after all that, I decided to get out. Let me know what else I should do with it. Part 2 of making a giant paper airplane. So I made this giant paper airplane and threw it off a bridge, but it failed. So I went home, assessed the damage, and put it in the dumpster. Then I reviewed the footage and knew what I had to do. I went to Walmart, got more poster board, then went home, swept the driveway, and set all my stuff down to begin construction. I again started by placing the 4 sheets together, and this time I used Gorilla Tape and also used a different type of poster board. I folded the plane lots of times and just began making all the necessary, paper airplane folds while adding tape until I was completely done. And it was done and ready to be tested. Like for part 2 or watch the full video on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres later today. So one day I went to Walmart to get the stuff to make a cardboard treehouse. I got a bunch of tape and a bunch of cardboard and then I went home to build. I cut one sheet and then folded it into half of a base. And then I added another sheet and taped them together. And then I added a final sheet and started taping down all the flaps. After that, I added a second level of cardboard and did my best to tape it and align it all properly. I then jumped in to tape the inside together, and then got out by crawling under it. I also taped the seam that connected the boxes all around it to better secure the 2 halves. And then I taped a sheet of cardboard on top of it for the floor. Then flipped it over and got in it to add more cardboard to the base. And after I did all that, I decided to lay down and take a break. And it was done and ready to be put in a tree, like for part 2. So one day I was dropping my giant 160-pound rubber band ball off a bucket lift, and I had some cool stuff to drop on it, including an inflatable pool, an air mattress, and a giant water balloon. I started with this, and it did that. Here's the underwater slow-mo. It hit the water so hard it did this to the ball. Then I got out the air mattress and dropped it on it as well, and it didn't even pop. Look at it. But it did lose some bands when it dropped. So then I tried again with the pineapple on it, but I missed the pineapple. Then I did the water balloon, and it completely smashed it. Here's the slow-mo. And then it rolled off and went into the woods, and it just kept going down this very steep hill. Like if you want to see how I get it out. So one day, after freezing a giant water balloon and it being hollow, people wanted me to do it bigger and better. And it was going to get colder, so I'm gonna. I let it fill up for even longer this time. And I was also going to let it sit for even longer. I zip-tied it shut, and then let it sit and came back the next day to check it out. And I could stand on it. It was pretty frozen. We gave it another day, and then came back out again. And the balloon had popped somehow, but the ice was still rock solid, and I could stand on it, kinda. I ripped the balloon off, then pushed it over, and it did that. And I threw the ice, and it was really, really strong. It's pretty thick ice. So one day I went to Walmart and got some balloons, a helium tank, and some string. And then I headed home to tie a bunch of balloons to toilet paper and then send it off. Don't do this part at home.
Hi. Jack, oh my word.
Then I made my first balloon, and we were best friends. I drew a face on it to make it more real, and then we hung out. Yeah. But then I let go and it flew away. And then I went back inside to get busy. I started out by blowing up a ton of balloons and putting them on the ceiling, and I didn't know how many I needed, so I just blew up as many as I could until the tank was empty and I was on my last balloon. I'm going to take this toilet paper and this duct tape, some balloons, and I'm going to make it fly. Like for part 2 where I let it go. So one day I decided to fill this giant hamster ball up with water and swim in it. And this one's a lot bigger than my last one, so it'd be easier to fill with water. And I stopped it at this level so I could still be able to get in and swim in it. And then I jumped in, and it was pretty cool inside. I went underwater, and here I am. And then I came back up and put some goggles on and went back underwater again. And it was really cold, so I got out for a sec, got in the hot tub, and then got back in with a floaty. And then spun around. And then I decided to turn it into a giant batch of Kool-Aid. Full videos on my YouTube, Dylan Ayres. So one day I wanted to turn my brother's truck into a pool to drive down the road in. So I went to Walmart to get a blow-up pool to put in the truck bed. I got one, and then I also got a pool noodle. After that, we saw a pool that was actually designed for trucks, so we got that instead. And we got a donut and a water gun, and then we left. I walked out, went home, and then placed it in my brother's truck. Then I got my air pump and started airing it up. And after that was done, I got the hose and started filling it all up with water. It took quite a while, and while we filled it up, we simultaneously added hot tub water to make it less cold. Then I took the hose out, added one last bucket of hot tub water, and I was done. And I was just chilling on the floaty, and now my brother's going to drive down the road. Full vid will be on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day someone commented telling me to put my giant hamster ball in the water, so I'm going to do that, but I pushed it through this fence and walked it out to the pond. But the fence had knocked a hole in it, so we had to repair it, and then I got in and got in the water. And I couldn't really move very well, and my biggest fear was going through the hole. I slipped a lot and also just laid down. And then I slipped some more and couldn't move for a while until I accidentally made my way over these branches. And I was trying to run the other way in fear of moving into them, but I couldn't. And eventually I did just float into shore and then got grabbed and got out. Like if I should jump off this bridge with it. So one day my family and I rented these cool scoot cars. I got in the green one, revved it up, and then took off. And traffic was kind of slow, so I stopped and beeped at a yellow one I saw. And then continued on down the coast. And my brother didn't like my driving that much, but I thought it was great. And we eventually made it to this curve thing where I raced my dad round and around. It was pretty hard to turn though, and I almost hit the curb. And my dad did hit the curb. Then I decided to ride passenger and just enjoy the ride and the view. And I saw a helicopter. Then we pulled up to this ice cream place where I got out and waited for my brother. Then went in and got ice cream that they actually rolled up and put into a cup and then handed to me. And it was pretty good. I then switched to the red car and drove out to a gas station where I filled it up and then drove it back. So one day someone commented that I need to put more coats of Flex Seal on the egg. So I Flex Sealed another egg and then put another coat on the other side. And after that I let it dry, then put another coat on. And then put another coat on. And then put one last coat on. And it was done and seemed pretty sturdy, so I tested it from a waist-high drop and it held up pretty well. So I went a little higher and it seemed a little bit mushed in. So I threw it up in the air and then it was like completely mushed in. So I just threw it up one more time for the heck of it. And it was crushed. So one day someone commented to try to sand my aluminum foil ball down and try to make it more round. So I got out a mallet to first shape it best I could. And it wasn't working very well, so then I decided to try a comment I saw putting it in the dryer to make it more round. And it sounded really loud and scary, so I took it out. Yeah, don't try that at home. And then I tried throwing the ball and even rolling it around. And when that failed, I got out the metal hammer, which does that to it. And I just focused my hitting in one spot to try to see how smooth I could get it. And it was pretty smooth compared to the other side. I tried my best to round out the rest of the ball and then got out this sander. And it sanded pretty sort of smooth. And it looked decently round, but got my fingers dirty. And with a little bit more of the hammer, the ball is overall way more round. Like if I should make it even rounder with rubber bands. So one day I ordered a giant water balloon. I tried to figure out how I was going to fill it up, and then I thought, rubber bands. And then I began filling it up until eventually it started to leak. And I tried to fix it, but failed, so I just had my brother hold it while I jumped.
No.
Yeah, pretty cool. Now here's the slow-mo. Wow. And it was broken. Like if I should do it again. One day I decided to take 2 gold chains, 1 fake, 1 kind of real, flex tape, a giant water balloon, and a giant rubber band ball back to the pawn shop.
Got doubled up in the chains.
Yeah.
I brought the rubber band ball in again. I just wanted you to see how big it is. I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on a price.
Big. Wow.
And I started off with this.
With this giant water balloon. This is pretty special. It can hold a lot of water, and it's really big.
I asked him what he thought he could give me, and he
You ever
said,
filled it up?
Yeah.
he said he'd do 5, but I thought that was way too low, so then I got out.
Genuine flex tape from Phil Swift himself.
Work good?
Yeah.
Is that flex tape strong enough to lift that ball?
And I didn't know, so we decided to test it. We put it on the ball, he picked it up, and it didn't work. So then I got out the 2
Tell me
chains.
what you think each one of them's worth.
He looked at him and said,
This one I think you stole off your curtains.
and then he went and did an acid test on the other one and said it basically it was just gold plated, which is what I thought anyway, so I just kept it. And then I left. Full vid will be on my YouTube. So one day it was raining, but that wasn't going to stop me from going outside. So I got in my hamster ball and let it air up. Yeah, it took a second. But when it was done, I took off in the hamster ball. I ran through puddles and didn't even get wet. I also jumped in them and rolled in them. I was basically indestructible, and I ran around completely protected from the forces of nature. Until I fell. And then I ran off and started rolling a lot. For some reason, I don't know. And my hamster ball got dirty, so my brother hosed it off. But then I just ran back into a puddle and fell again. The end. So one day I went to Walmart and got all the rubber bands they had to make another rubber band ball. Because a lot of people have been wanting me to cut my giant 300-pound rubber band ball in half with a 1,000-degree knife. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to make another smaller one, starting with this small one and adding a bunch more bands to it. Until eventually it looked like this. And it wasn't near as big as my giant one, but check out this cool little trick when you drop them. It launches them. And it was time to cut first this even smaller one. It cut it right in half and burnt right through it. And then this one. And it worked its way through. And eventually I sawed a little bit and it just popped all the bands off. Remember, don't try any of this stuff at home. It wouldn't go through the tinfoil ball, so I just threw the knife at the tree and stuck it. So one day I decided to take my rubber band ball and a bunch of other random stuff to a pawn shop like I did before when my rubber band ball was a lot smaller. But now it's bigger and I'm back.
Oh yeah, that was a rubber ball. Oh, it's bigger. How many bands is it now?
I don't know. I brought some more items too. I made this in junior high, a one-of-a-kind CO2 car.
Did you win?
No.
Oh, it's a loser car.
He then looked at it and didn't want to buy it. So I showed him
This
this.
is a can of air.
It gone empty though.
Oh, I used it a little bit.
And I said it was worth,
$50.
and he said no, so I showed him the next item.
I found this at an abandoned race car track. A genuine gold cup.
Then he asked why I thought it was gold.
It looks gold.
And he even tested it and found out it was stainless steel, so I brought out the rubber band
It's
ball.
probably the most famous rubber band ball you'll ever see. Its intrinsic value, probably $5,000.
How'd you come up with that value?
I just did.
He didn't want to buy it, but he gave me the good idea to put it on eBay.
Like eBay.
That's a neat idea. I might do that.
So then I left. Let me know if you think I should put it on eBay.
So one day I was just walking along the road and I see a fortune cookie, so I stopped to pick it up.
Fortune cookie.
I open it to see what it says, and it read,
You're gonna go on a long trip. Wow. I wonder what that means.
and right after I read that, a big white truck pulled up and stopped right beside me. And the guy in it said,
Hey kid, want some candy?
and I said,
Yeah, I want some candy.
and then I ran around to the passenger side to get in and get my candy. I got in and this happened. Don't get in strangers' cars, and like for part 2.
Part 2 of being locked out of my house. So after I couldn't open the door, I grabbed the propane tank and I decided not to use it and sat it down and pulled out my phone to call my mom. She answered and I said,
Hey Mom, I'm locked out of the house.
and she said to come get her garage door opener out of her car. So I ran to my car, hopped in, and headed to her work. I got the garage door opener out of her car, and then I headed home. Hopped out, and went to go test it out. And it worked, because, yeah, why wouldn't it work? So I went in. So one day I got a comment that said to turn my brother's truck bed into a pool and swim in it. And I've already done this for YouTube, but not really for TikTok, so here you go. I filled the pool up with water, and then got in it, sat down, and we took off. And it was pretty cool at first. I put my head underwater, and that was cool. I came up and then just chilled and enjoyed the ride. It was all pretty chill for the most part, and then we went kind of fast, and I also splashed out some water. Then we went back home and I got out. What else should I do?
So one day I was home alone, just sitting on my bed, eating popcorn and watching a movie, and then I heard a noise. I quickly forgot and went back to my movie, until I hear it again. Afraid that there's a bad guy in the house, I get up to hide in my closet. I shut the door, trying to be as quiet as possible. I put my hood up, and then I think, wait, now I'm trapped with the bad guy in my house. And I realize I have to make a run for it. After running into the door, I run out my closet, down the stairs, with the fall. But I keep on going because my life's at stake, out the front door, over the bush. And I keep on running all the way to the street. Like for part 2.
So one day I pulled up to my house, got out, and headed over to the garage door to put the code in. But when I entered the code, it wouldn't open. So I tried again, and it still didn't open. I kept trying, but with no luck, so I ran to my front door to see if it was unlocked. And being my luck, it wasn't. So I ran around to the back to see if the back door was unlocked. And of course, it wasn't. So I picked up a propane tank and a light for part 2. So one day I decided to fill my storm shelter up with ball pit balls, but first I had to clean it. I swept it up for a minute until it looked like this. It was a little bit better, and then I got the ball pit balls. And I dumped them all in, and it looked like this. So I went in and laid down. It was pretty cool. I threw the balls in the air, and then I started trying to make it into this little hole. I missed, and then got close, and then kept going until I got it. Then I threw it at that hole, chilled a bit, and jumped in. And here's what it looks like with the door shut, just an underground ball pit. Let me know what else I should do. Part 2 of living in a cardboard treehouse because of Corona. So I came down after it was all over, and then I went inside. And everyone was gone, so I went to my car. I got in and drove where I thought people might be. I got out and walked around, and it was all empty and abandoned. There wasn't a single soul in sight. I contemplated life for a second, and then I went back to my car and just drove off. I came to a stop out in the middle of nowhere, got out, and just took off walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was alone in this world. And that was okay. This is all a joke, by the way.
So one day, after people kept commenting for me to spend 24 hours in the storm shelter, I decided to sleep in it. I shoved an air mattress down there, had my MREs, and I was ready to sleep in it. I then left and came back later that night to actually sleep in it, because I wasn't going to stay in there the whole time. I set up my lantern, turned on these lights, and I was ready to go. And it was pretty cool. I laid down and tried to go to sleep, and then my brother came out to check on me like 2 hours later. We talked for a bit, he told me the time, and then he left, and I ate my MREs. And I didn't put water in the eggs for they were bad, but the ice cream sandwich was still good. And then I went to sleep. And here I was the next morning, and it wasn't that bad a sleep. So one day, I woke up for school, like I usually do. But this time I woke up without my alarm, which was shocking, but I just went about my morning as usual. You know, I got up, hit my face with water, and then I headed downstairs. But on my way downstairs, I noticed it was super quiet, and nobody was there, which is weird because everybody should be getting ready. So then I decided to go to the kitchen and look at the clock on the microwave. And then I said,
Holy crap. It's 9:30.
like for part 2. Part 2 of making a painting and selling it on eBay. So I put it on eBay for $500, and then I woke up the next morning and checked my phone. And I saw that it was bidding for over $10,000, so I immediately got up and made another one. This one was bigger and actually looked kind of nice, and I put some effort into it. I took a nice picture of it and put it on eBay with a starting bid of $1,000. And the title, Conflicts of Life, with the description that read, "The lines symbolize the different conflicts of life, while the swirled background shows the spinning pool it's all trapped in." And my dad also made a painting that I named Waves of Life, and I also wrote the description. The colors represent the many waves of life and emotions that we face that are constantly changing. So now I guess we'll see how they bid.